What is exactly the meaning of asceticism? Ascetic spirit is what is called the spirit of mortification. It is a spirit to kill the sinews of energy, all dynamism, all impulses, all passions, all rushes, all pulsation of life and body. In some of the extreme cases of asceticism, you find ascetics inflicting pain on their body. William James gave an experience of one of the ascetics, and he had made a special robe at night, because at night while sleeping he felt comfortable. So in order that even the sleep may not be comfortable, he got nails fixed in his robe, so that when he wore the robe, the nails would impinge upon the skin and it would become extremely painful. So this is an extreme case of asceticism. It is a movement against even all comfort, a movement in which you undergo all kinds of difficulties and discomfort of the bodily life, vital life, mental life. All kinds of joys, all kinds of pleasures, all kinds of relaxations, all to be renounced. These ascetic practices have been in India also, plenty of them. There were experiences in which you inflict cold and heat and rain on the body. Unbearable heat, unbearable cold, and try to suffer. On the assumption that as long as there is comfort in the body, you will feel like enjoying the body. And enjoyment of the body keeps you away from the spirit. A spirit has to be inactive, completely free from all the snares which bind you to the body. You have many ascetic experiences in regard to control of the taste, the palate. Not to eat this, not to eat that. Anything that gives you great pleasure, you should avoid it. There was, in the recent philosophy of Gandhism also, there was a tremendous asceticism. To wear the minimum clothing and the bare clothing, to eat the bare minimum, and to eat that which is absolutely not only without taste but even anti-taste. One of his disciples, called Kishoral Mashruwala, he has written his experiments, ascetic experiments, in which he said that he began to have, even in the insipid food, some kind of taste. So he decided to put quinine in that food. But afterwards, even the quinine he began to feel quite happy about. So, these kinds of experiments have been made in India, and in all ascetic traditions, not only in India, even In the West, asceticism is not absent. People have tried to master the pangs of hunger, passions of all kinds, pursuit after beauty to be completely shunned, and relationships, of course, to be completely thrown away. To lead a life of entire relationlessness and to live in the most uncomfortable conditions. Not to sleep at all for days and days and days, because sleep also would give you some kind of comfort. So even what is called conquest of sleep, conquest of palate, conquest of sight, conquest of touch, all sensations, it's a process of mortification. Give up all activities, all ease, all joy, all enthusiasm, on the assumption that if by doing so you can conquer and you can distinguish between body and your spirit, and ultimately spirit can be realized as distinct from the body. And spirit being inactive, ultimately there is no question of resumption of any activity. Body is thrown away, ultimately to be as a kind of a corpse, to be thrown away, having no meaning or utility, and liberation of the spirit. This is the path of asceticism. Now Sri Aurobindo says that these are exaggerations of the ascetic spirit. But for any conquest, for any self-mastery, ascetic spirit is very important. And the conquest of sense experience is a necessary part of the self-mastery. The methods, of course, are not ascetic methods. And Sri Aurobindo says you can master the sense life, vital life, mental life is possible, but not through mortification. There is a possibility of withdrawal, inner withdrawal, not external withdrawal, inner withdrawal, the kind of withdrawal that Gita is preaching. Where the Gita also says, one who eats too much or one who eats too little, one who sleeps very little or one who sleeps a lot. All this is to be avoided, and you can ultimately arrive at the mastery of all sensations and all sense life by inner withdrawal. And therefore, which is more difficult in a way. It is easier to shun something, but to be in it, to be in water and to be not wet, jala kamalavat, is more difficult, but that is possible. And it is that path which is necessary. Therefore, while condemning asceticism, the spirit in which you want to conquer and to stand above the demands of the body, that truth has got to be affirmed. The excessive movements of asceticism, of course, have to be rejected. So Sri Aurobindo says that ascetic spirit has a truth behind it. As the message of arriving at inactive reality is also truth. You must arrive at inactive reality. And both these elements have to be preserved even while you are seeking a synthesis and reconciliation and integration. Therefore, Sri Aurobindo says in the last paragraph, we seek indeed a larger and completer affirmation. We perceive that in the Indian ascetic ideal, the great Vedantic formula one without a second, has not been read sufficiently in the light of that other formula, equally imperative. All this is the Brahman. The passionate aspiration of man upward to the divine has not been sufficiently related to the descending movement of the divine, leaning downward to embrace eternally its manifestation. Its meaning in matter has not been so well understood as its truth in the spirit. The reality which the sannyasin seeks has been grasped in its full height, but not, as by the ancient Vedantins, in its full extent and comprehensiveness. But in our completer affirmation, we must not minimize the part of the pure spiritual impulse. As we have seen how greatly materialism has served the ends of the divine, so we must acknowledge the still greater service rendered by asceticism to life. We shall preserve the truths of material science and its real utilities in the final harmony, even if many, or even if all of its existing forms have been broken or left aside. An even greater scruple of right preservation must guide us in our dealing with the legacy, however actually diminished or depreciated, of the Aryan past. We stop here for the moment, then we can come back. Reality omnipresent. Sri Aurobindo refers to this experience of the silent Brahman, in the light of which renunciation of the world would be a logical message. But, as Sri Aurobindo points out, silent or inactive Brahman is only one of the penultimate experiences of the highest spirit. And there is also the harmony of the inactive and the active Brahman. And it is that thesis that Sri Aurobindo develops in this chapter. That is to say, the inactivity of Brahman is not the denial of the world, is not meaninglessness of the world, but one of the poises in which one would not be drowned in the world. To be master of the world, one has to be able to withdraw from the world. And if one has to effect any change in the world, one should be able to go beyond the world and bring out from the inactive Brahman that aspect which is to be yet added to this world, which is not yet here in this world. All great creativity is fundamentally a creativity that one can gain by entering into the inactive silence, and something that wells out of that silence and pours into this world. And thus one can even speak of the change of the world beyond the present elements which are available. In fact, one of the greatest, not one of them, but the greatest message of Aurobindo is that the world as it is today is having a certain chain in which it is limited by certain operations of a few laws. And these few laws are considered to be insuperable. Sri Aurobindo points out that these laws seem to limit our possibilities. And the highest that we want to achieve in the world becomes unachievable because of these laws. How to break these laws so that a better world can be created. All the reformists complain against the world as it is. All kinds of practices which are going on in the world, even so-called legal activities, even they are limited activities. And there are so many evils which are going on, which even by process of law, you can't change. You can't change what human beings can see on the television if they want to see something, which many people may seem to be undesirable. Even if you make a law, that law can be infringed. So the present world is so constituted that ideal world cannot become manifest. At the most, you can rise to a certain rung, and that to a certain rung only, not beyond. A new world requires a new energy to be manifested. And this new energy cannot become manifest unless we are able to go into the inactive Brahman, in which there is a store of energy. The inactive Brahman is not empty of energy. It is a quiet reservoir of energy. And it is out of that quiet reservoir that new energies can be brought out. There is, therefore, as Sri Krishna says, there is not only Akshara Purusha, which is Kutastha, but also Kshara Purusha. And beyond both Kshara and Akshara, there is a Purushottama. And this also is verifiable in spiritual experience. It is not a dogma, it is not a belief. It is a real reality into the relationship with which one can enter. So Sri Aurobindo says, you come to that paragraph which begins with, but what then of the silent self? Fourth paragraph. What then of that silent self? What then of that silent self, inactive, pure, self-existent, self-enjoying, which presented itself to us as the abiding justification of the ascetic? Here also harmony and not irreconcilable opposition must be the illuminative truth. The silent and the active Brahman are not different, opposite and irreconcilable entities, the one denying, the other affirming a cosmic illusion. They are one Brahman in two aspects, positive and negative, and each is necessary to the other. It is out of this silence that the world which creates the worlds forever proceeds. For the word, Shabda, expresses that which is self-hidden in the silence. It is an eternal passivity which makes possible the perfect freedom and omnipotence of an eternal divine activity in innumerable cosmic systems. For the becomings of that activity derive their energies and their illimitable potency of